Dear students, today we are going to start the new learning journey of programming in VB.NET. In this lecture, we are going to cover essential Visual Basic.NET. This lecture covers the basic concepts involved in object-oriented programming, essentials, features, advantages and disadvantages of Visual Basic.NET. In the software industry, the changes cannot be ignored, but it can be adapted. Every day in the IT market, new tools and technologies are emerging. The software developers needs to adapt to the new technologies and they need to proceed with the software development process. When developing the software, each developer should ensure that software is highly maintainable, reusable, portable, secured, integrated, and provides user friendliness. They can either choose any one of the programming technologies like modular, top-down, bottom-up, structured, and object-oriented. Before start developing the software, the developer should focus on the emerging issues and identify the possible solutions and frame the strategies how to resolve all these issues. The first issue is representing the real life entities. Normally, we are dividing the larger problem into smaller entities. How to represent the entities in terms, how to map the real-time entities in terms of technical objects. Second is, though the software is highly needed, demanded, but if it is not supported with the required interface, then it is outdated. So the developer should focus on the effective interfaces that supports the user to make use of the software. And how the code reusability takes place and how the code extensibility takes place. Once the program size increase, automatically the executional speed also increase. It makes the software quality to goes down. In order to overcome this challenge, the possible codes can be reused whenever we need. Write once and call the same code wherever we want. And whenever the user is coming with the new requirement, after installing the software in the real-time environment, that software should accept the new requirements and it is ready to update the existing code without affecting the functionality of the existing module. It's very clear, whatever the code it is going to be developed, that must be reusable and extensible. And the developer should identify the methodologies how to improve the software productivity and how to decrease the software cost. Then they need to be very clear in framing the quality measures and ensuring that all the measures are taken into considerations and implemented without any violations. Then the developer should be very clear in preparing the time schedule. If the developer is not sticking onto the target, the competitor may release their product. So automatically your product becomes outdated. So introducing your product in the market at the right time is very essential. And the developer should know how to industrialize the product. Unless that product is with the motto of industrialization, and there is no meaning in developing with all the efforts. So these are the possible issues the developer should consider before start developing any code. Nowadays, due to the variety of data, the volume of data, every industry is preferring the support of object-oriented programming concepts. Though different programming techniques are available, this object-oriented programming supports the entire IT environment to develop the code with the required expectations. These are the few characterization of object-oriented programming. The importance is given to data. Mainly, the data security is the primary objective of the object-oriented programming. So the first characteristic is the most of the importance is given to the data. How this is possible? Larger programs can be divided into manageable unit called object. So for every software, we need to identify the suitable data structure that are designed to characterize the objects. Here the functions that are going to operate on data are tied together with the respective data structure. Data is hidden and accessed only through the external function. So here we are preventing the direct access. So mainly for ensuring the security, the direct access to the data is prohibited here. One object can communicate with the another object, like how one person is sending message to the another person. New data and functions can be added at any time. Normally this object-oriented program applies bottom-up approach because for developing the new software, it is not mandatory that all the requirements need to be submitted in the initial stage itself. You can start the development process with few requirements, and once it's satisfied, then you can proceed with the next module. So that's possible with the support of bottom-up approach. So any programming language can be called as an object-oriented programming language if the language supports all the following concepts. So here are the list of object-oriented concepts that make any programming language to be more effective. For example, C++, Java, .NET comes under object-oriented programming concepts. This concept supports the language to overcome all the complications faced in structure-oriented or procedure-oriented programming techniques. The concepts are objects, classes, data abstraction and encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, dynamic binding, and message passing. First, we can see what is an object, because for every software product, the object is the primary element. Object is nothing but it is a real-time entity, real-world entity. We can simply define it as anything in the real world that contains certain property and behavior. We can term it as an object. For example, table is an object. Yes, of course, table is having a purpose. Table is having an properties like size, color, the brand, the material used, etc. Like fan is an object, pen is an object, bicycle is an object, keyboard is an object, student is an object. Yes, of course, student is having roll number, name, email ID, phone number, mark, grade, rank, address, etc. Likewise, employee is an object because every employee is having an property. Employee ID, employee name, address, phone number, etc. So the employee is having a behavior. The student is a behavior. So these things are called as an object. Technically speaking, any entity in the real world that has state and behavior is known as an object. Basically, the object can be categorized into physical and logical. What is physical? We can touch and feel. But what is logical? We can look and feel. So technically speaking, object is a bundle of related variables and functions. It contains two elements. One is state and another one is the behavior. State is a well-defined condition of an item. A state captures the relevant aspects of an object. Behavior is the observable effects of an operation or event. For example, if you take the student as an object, so as I already told you, the state for a student is the student roll number, name, mark, email ID, gender, etc. What's the behavior? Reading, writing, listening, playing, watching, etc. So, if anything in the real world that contains the state and the behavior, that can be well defined as an object. Here we are considering house is an object. So what are the properties for an object house? The location, the color, the area of house, etc. What are the possible operations that we can perform over this object house? Open the main door, close the main door. So we can call this house as an object. The second concept is class. Class is nothing but it's a collection of similar objects. For example, if any two object is having the common characteristics, that can be bring under the common class. Now, for simple understanding, consider the class called fruits and vegetables. Mango, apple, banana comes under fruits class because these elements are having certain common characteristics. Carrot, brinjal, potato. These things comes under the class called vegetable because these elements are having some common characteristics. We cannot make the apple and carrot in one class because the apple and carrot is having a different characteristics. One belongs to fruit class, another belongs to vegetable class. So the class is nothing but it's a grouping of similar objects together. In order to protect the data, in order to hide the data, we are grouping the similar objects. So in the first slide, we've seen that the code reusability plays the vital role. Code reusability is implemented with the support of the concept called inheritance. It's nothing but when one object acquires all the property and behavior of another object. Example is grandparent, parent, and children's. Here, just assume we are having three classes. One is grandparent, parent, and another one will be the children relationship. Here, children class having the property of its own, having the property of parents, and having the property of grandparents. So all the characteristics are incorporated inside the children class. So the children class is inheriting the required property from parent class as well as from the grandparents. So if this is the scenario, it's no need to define the same code again and again. If the code is written in grandparents, that can be used in children. If the code is used in parent class, that can be inherited inside the children. This is how we can make the code reusability can happen. So reusability, inheritance is nothing but if you write once the code and whenever its need emerges, you can call the particular code in the respective classes. So many different types of inheritance are there. Depending upon our application requirement, we can use the appropriate types. Polymorphism. Yes, of course. By the name itself, it is very clear. Poly means multiple. Here, every object is having the ability to take more than one form. For example, we are assuming the student is an object. Yes, of course. The student is exhibiting different behavior in different instance of time. For example, inside the classroom, his behavior is different. Inside the temple, along with his parent, behavior is different. Inside the cinema theater, along with his friend, his behavior is different. So, the object is same, but the behavior what's exhibiting is different because it's based on the input. So, based on the input, the objects are having the capability to exhibit different behaviors. For example, when a student along with his teacher, he is having some different behavior. The student along with his parent, he is having different behavior. The student along with his friend, he is having different behavior. So the input is different. So automatically it changes the behavior. For example, if you are defining one function called addition, what happens? The purpose of addition is to add two elements. But for adding to integer, I need to write one addition function. And for adding to character, I need to write another function called addition. So what happens? The number of lines may increase. It increases the execution speed. Automatically, it deviates the program quality. So what we can do is, we can create an addition function once and make that addition functions to dynamically respond to the input. For example, if the input is integer, the function can take the input and perform addition of two integer number. If the input is character, the function can take the character as an input and it can perform addition of two characters. So this is the way how we can make the single object to perform multiple behavior. Then only we can make the software code to be highly reliable. Abstraction. Yes, abstraction is nothing but instead of giving the entire background detail, we are giving only the essential detail. For example, when you open an online ticket reservation portal, the user wants us whether the train is available on that date, what is the cost, and book the ticket, the payment mode. That's all. We cannot show that the user is always knows the computer knowledge. Any type of customer, because the software always focusing on the global requirement of different kinds of user. So this online ticket reservation is common portal. So what happened? The user expectation is only these details to be displayed on the window, on the screen. Instead of giving such an expected detail, if the developer is trying to show how the security concept is implemented and what front-end language is used, how the data transfer to the database, how the searching process takes place, everything in the screen, no user will prefer to use that particular software. So this is a very important and it is a very crucial object-oriented concept that everyone should remember. First, understand the user expectations very clearly. Once it is clear, then design your software that responds and meet that current expectation of the user, and make all other functionalities to be executed at the background, because that technical background detail is not needed to the user. Only the expected outcome should be visible to the user. So consider another scenario, that phone call, caller and the receiver. So they want to communicate certain message. So what the steps they need? Establish the connection, takes place the conversation, and terminate the connection. That's all. Both of them don't want to know how the wire is connected, how the voice message is converted into signals, and how the signals are transmitted over the wires. That is not needed to them, because we doesn't know that caller and receiver is flexible in using the data communication technologies or not. Any maybe literate or they may be any illiterate. Simply they wanted to call, establish connection, uh, send some voice, they are having the conversation. Once the conversation is over, they are going to terminate the connection. So this is what the entire model should be focused. Encapsulation, yes. So the primary objective of object-oriented programming is the importance is given to the data. What is it? What is the meaning? So we are protecting the data. We are going to secure the data. So how this is happening? How the security is confirmed? What we are actually doing is we are wrapping, we are wrapping the programming code and the actual data together. So what is the purpose of this wrapping process is to prevent the direct access to the data. We will have only the indirect access, because the code associated with that data alone is having the privilege to access the data. No other code or no other part of the program is having the rights to access the data. That's why we are wrapping the code and the data together. It means only the wrapped code can have the accessing rights towards the particular data. So just consider the capsules. We doesn't know. So inside a single capsule, we are having lot of medicinal elements. Without knowing it, we are simply inhaling. So the encapsulation concept is similar to the concept of capsules. So mainly to protect, because every element inside a capsule is having some medical features. So without knowing that, we are inhaling. Likewise, we don't want to bother about the data, where it is stored, how it is stored, in which format it is stored, and what data structure it is used to organize the data. That is unwanted. We need to access the data. So we are using that code associated with that data to access the respective data. Dynamic binding, yes. Normally, binding is nothing but linking the procedure call to the code is termed as binding. This binding is of two types. One is static, another one is dynamic. So what is static? This linking process happens in compile time. Then what is dynamic? This linking process happens in runtime. That's all. But most probably, this linking of procedure call with the actual code will happen only at the runtime. Almost in all the software elements, they will prefer only the dynamic. Only in rare case, the developers goes for static linking of procedure call with the actual codes. So for implementing this dynamic binding, it is associated with two more object-oriented concepts like polymorphism and inheritance. Message passing, yes. Very good example is WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook. I told you that student is an object, employee is an object. So one student can send a message to the another student. So we can call one object is sending and receiving the message from the another object. So this is very clear. By the name itself we can understand the purpose of this concept. Because in a particular software problem, we doesn't have any mechanisms to differentiate the dependency and non-dependency. So we need to provide options to the dependent object to communicate with each other, and that message passing to be hidden for the independent object. So this is a flexible concept that can be embedded in all type of software projects. So these are the various benefits of OOPS. So far we have seen 7 concepts of object-oriented programming. So by that we can conclude the benefits like eliminate the redundant code, save development time, have higher productivity, secure programs, have multiple instances, possible to map the technical object with the real world problems, easy to divide the larger program into smaller parts, capture more detail, easily upgraded from smaller to larger systems, effective communication, easy to manage software complexity. So these are the few applications where we can apply object-oriented programming. Real-time systems, simulation and modeling, object-oriented databases, hypertext, hypermedia, expertext, artificial intelligence, expert systems, neural networks, parallel programming, decision support systems, office automation systems, and CAD/CAM sector. It is very clear that this object-oriented programming concepts supports the applications where the human intervention is not required for decision-making process. So that's all about the introduction part for object-oriented programming. Now we are stepping into essential Visual Basic.NET. The reason why we seen the basic concepts of OOPS is the Visual Basic.NET is an object-oriented programming. So it is a very simple language. If anybody knows the object-oriented concept, then they feel very simple to develop the applications using Visual Basic.NET. Visual Basic.NET stands for Visual Basic Network Enabled Technologies. It is a simple, high-level, object-oriented programming language developed by Microsoft in 2002. It is a successor of Visual Basic 6.0 that's implemented on the Microsoft.NET framework. It's an object-oriented programming language, and this supports to design Windows, mobile, and web-based applications. It supports a rapid application development toolkit. It is not a case-sensitive language. It supports Boolean condition for decision making in programming. It also supports the multi-threading concepts. It provides simple event management in .NET applications. A window form enables us to inherit all existing functionality of form that can be used to create a new form. It uses an external object as a reference that can be used in a VB.NET application. Automatic initialized, a garbage collection. It follows a structure and extensible programming language for error detection and correction. Conditional compilation and easy to use generic classes. It is very useful in developing different types of applications. These are the few advantages of VB.NET. VB.NET executes a program to create a robust, stable, and secure applications. It's a pure object-oriented programming language based on objects and classes. Using the Visual Studio integrated development environment, user can develop in any applications. Libraries helps in developing more robust applications. It uses drop and drag elements to create web forms in .NET applications. This .NET allows to connect one application to another applications that created in the same language. A VB.NET can automatically structure your code. It uses a new concept of error handling in the Visual Basic .NET framework. Also used to transfer data between different layers of the .NET architecture. We are having few difficulties in disadvantages of VB.NET. VB.NET programming language is unable to handle the pointers directly because it occupies large memory and maintenance of that pointer is also little bit tedious. So there is no direct way of handling the pointers. Though it is easy to learn, it increasing the challenges in identifying the right job because it increase larger competition because it is an easiest language. So anybody can learn. So it is very tough to identify the challenging job opportunity. It uses an intermediate language compilation that can be easily decompiled. So for executing this intermediate language, we need just-in-time compiler to installed in all the target computers for executing this intermediate language. So it contains a large collection of libraries for the just-in-time compiler that holds to interpret the applications because we are having enormous collection of files and each file occupies the memory with more requirement. So this we can consider it as a difficulties, but when compared to the advantages, this disadvantages are not going to affect the quality of the software product. Yes. So today we have seen the basics of object-oriented programming and the introduction part of the Visual Basic Programming.NET. In the next lecture, we are going to see the basic elements needed to design a simple applications using the Visual Studio Integrator Development Environment. Thank you.